What's up, guys? We're in round 22 of this AFL career mode season, and today I was going to talk about the bottom 9 sides, I think, and sort of where they're going to for next year, because as we know, Melbourne could still make the finals. So I was going to talk about the bottom 10, but Melbourne is still sort of in that race. So I'm just going to talk about the bottom 9 and a little bit about what they should target during the off-season, maybe, and where they could go next year. Alright, everyone, let us begin round 21. Now, I don't really know too much as to what exactly it is that I'm going to be talking about today, because I couldn't find any real specific things that jumped out at me early. So I figured we'd just start at the bottom of the ladder and work our way up and just see how many teams we can get through as to what they're going to do next year, I guess, and what they could be doing next year. So we first need to look at who's at the bottom. Essendon, so the team that I'm playing right now. The Bombers are at the bottom of the ladder, and they, obviously they're going to get a number of players back. Where Michael Hurley goes will be a big influence. That's a horrendous kick. Where Michael Hurley goes will be a big influence on what happens for them. And same thing for where, if Hibbard stays or if he goes, they're going to get Hooker back, they're going to get Heppel back, all these H's, they're going to get Hocking back, and then they're going to look okay. Whether Watson plays, I think is probably irrelevant to them. They've probably got the guys to cover him anyway. It'll just be whether or not Jobe wants to keep going for next season. But what are Essendon target apart from someone with the number 1 pick or possibly the number 2 pick if they get another win with over Carlton later on in the year? So that'll be interesting. Also, Brisbane got another win, didn't they? Oh, that's right. So that kind of leaves the door open for the Spoons still to go to Brisbane. If Brisbane do end up getting the wooden spoon, I think that there is a legitimate case for them to get a priority pick because they're just so far down in the dumps at the moment, which is redonkulous. Anyway, I think the Bombers will shoot up the ladder a little bit next year. I still think they'll be like a bottom 6 to bottom 8 side. I don't think they'll be dramatically good. But that being said, they're still going to be a little bit of a threat to top 8 teams, as I think a lot of teams will be next year, because I think this year what we had was we had 8 really strong teams, Melbourne being the 9th sort of strong team, and North Melbourne starting 9-0, and now they've gone 3-8 over the next 11 weeks, possibly to miss the finals after a 9-0 start. So that obviously is part of their draw, part of their cliff starting to fall off. I think they'll probably fall. Anyway, we'll talk about North Melbourne later. But let's keep going. Brisbane Lions, what do they need? They need everything that they can get. Their midfield is supposed to be, their best asset, and yet continually they get destroyed in there. They're starting to put a few key position players down in the back line. Merritt hasn't got too much longer, you wouldn't think, and he kind of has to stay there, I think, just out of necessity rather than wanting to keep going. And then who else have you got in there? You've probably got... who else do you reckon would you've got McStay down there. He's pretty good at the moment. You've got a couple of guys in that forward line looking for spots. You got Close, you got Hipwood, you got Shacky. So there's a number of players in that forward line that can actually grow and develop over the next couple of years. But it's just how well their backs can hold up defensively, I guess, and how well their midfield can be consistent. I know they've got a lot of those smaller type forwards that run through the midfield, like Taylor. You got Zorko, and Zorko's mainly a midfielder, but he plays as sort of a high half forward. And then you've got Josh Green as well. So 3 guys who, are pretty good at ground level, but aren't great. Especially like Louis Taylor and Josh Green, they can't be extraordinarily dominant running through that middle of the ground there, and that's something they need to improve on. Let's move on to Fremantle. They are in all sorts. Apparently everything's getting destroyed there this week, or like the last week. They had some guy quit. Supposedly everyone wants a trade to get out. It's just quite bizarre, the amount of, like, the downfall of Fremantle over the past year and a bit. Since the preliminary final, or since they beat Sydney in round 1 of the finals last year after going, I think it was 18-4 throughout the regular home and away season, Fremantle are now, like, you know, since that first win, they're, 3 wins and 18 losses since that time. So that is a huge fall from grace. And now you've got all of these people wanting to leave, or supposedly anyway, whether Fife is going at the end of next year. Mundy's not around for too much longer, you wouldn't think. Ballantyne supposedly wants a trade. So Pavlich retiring at the end of the year. They're going to be stuck in this sort of hole, Fremantle, I think. And you've only really got Bennell coming in for next season, and just or like as somewhat of a new player, but they still don't know like when they're going to get him. So there's just all of these questions that need to be answered from a Fremantle perspective as to who's going to be at the club next year. It's probably going to be a big clean out. They'll probably lose, 10 players or so out from their squad, which is a fair amount. It's about 25% of your squad. Barlow won't be there, you wouldn't think. It just depends on what kind of their vision is, and whether they even know what their vision is, and that's kind of the real question here is, what does Fremantle want for next year? And I think no one really knows. So they're in a bit of trouble. If they can get Taberner up and running next year, and Walters is alright, their forward line looks okay, but it just you've got guys like Johnson and Sandilands. He's only got 1 year left, you'd think, in him. It's just, a world of trouble for Fremantle at the moment, and I don't really know what else they can do. We look at Carlton, they've got a huge hole in their list as well. They sort of tried to patch it up this year, and everyone's like, oh yeah, Carlton, they're not as bad as we thought they are. Well, they're still pretty bad. I mean, they only won the 6 games this year, still with 2 to come, 1 against Essendon, so they might get a win there, and they play Melbourne this week, so you never know, they could kill Melbourne's finals chances this weekend. But, they're a team, Carlton, that has a lot of, B-grade players from other clubs that have come in. They started the season well. They haven't necessarily finished off the season well. So that's going to be a critical component of this, as to see whether or not they can get that done, and how they can, put themselves in a better position for the future. I mean, you've got sort of a little bit of a team to work with. You've got Rowe in that back line doing really well. And there was another guy in that back line doing really well. And then you've got, you've got Gibbs, Murphy, Cripps, guys you can build a team around, and that's insanely good. And you've also got Casbolt as your big key forward in there. I mean, he's not, the best key forward in the world, but he's still, a big presence in that forward line. So if they can, increase... I don't even know what Carlton need. It's the same thing with Fremantle. They're just... There's holes everywhere, and it's just going to be hard to fix. That's something they're going to have to work with, and I guess they can do that at some stage. I don't really know what's really out there that they can be looking at to get, unless they're going to try and get like a Hurley or someone, which would not be a bad choice. That's touched, I think. Anyway, let's keep going. The Gold Coast Suns, they don't really need much. They've only got the 6 wins this year. They just lost to Essendon, which is, not great signs. But you look at the things that they're getting back next year. Well, I guess it depends on who they get back next year. If O'Meara and Prestia are there next year, which signs point to no, then, the Gold Coast Suns, I still think they'll be very good. They'll still get, Riscatelli, Abler, a number of their players back. And that forward line is very dangerous. You've got Wright, you've got Lynch, who's probably, the best forward in the game at the moment, apart from Buddy. And you've got Sam Day in there as well, who's starting to look like the presence he always wanted to become, or they always thought that he would be. So they've definitely got room to work with the Gold Coast in terms of their midfield stocks, and they've got a number of players coming through as well. So I think that they'll probably be right next year. They'll push up regardless of who comes into that side in the off season. I think that a lot of their growth will come internally. We've seen how the Giants have done that, and the Gold Coast, they probably would have played finals already 2 years ago, and even last year maybe if Ablett, no, not last year, 2 years ago though, for sure, if Ablett hadn't been injured. So definitely they have some improvement coming through their own players, and they're going to get opportunities to play really well next year. So I think the Gold Coast, they're probably in one of the better spots for sides, as are, I think, Richmond, who are just sitting in 13th on top of them on the ladder at the moment. I think Richmond, they've probably got, they've got about three players that might come in as new recruits for next year. You've got, Dion Prestia might come into the club. That's still unconfirmed. Obviously, until that deal is done. I'd still trade pick 6 if it ends up being pick 6 for Dion Prestia. I think that's a pretty good deal rather than someone you need to develop. You have the choice of either potentially getting a Bontempelli-like player or already knowing that you've got an A-grader there. So I feel like Richmond, they haven't been great at drafting over the last few years, although we've actually been okay the last couple of seasons. But I would still much prefer to actually trade that pick 6 for Dion Prestia, which would probably be beneficial in the long run, I think anyway. And who knows, there's a number of Giants players that want out, whether you get any of them, whether you go after a Devon Smith or something like that. You're going to get Yaron into that team. You're going to get, Richmond's half-back line's going to look much better round one next year than it did sort of even this week. It's going to be Hooley, Deledio, and Yaron. You would think Yaron if he's good to go next year. And that looks like a much more dangerous, sort of half-back line than the more inexperienced names like Short and even McIntosh, who was pretty good at the start of the year. You've got Corey Ellis, who's still a player that can come into the side and do good things. Oleg Markov's only played the 3 or 4 games, but already he looks like a ready-made player that's dangerous. So there's a number of positives to look for in the Richmond side for next year, and I think that they will be challenging for a finals position next year. I'd like to think so. I saw Dimmer say that as well on the couch last night, and I kind of just hoped that he would. I think he's right. I'd like to think he's right. It's just up to whether the players can do it, and we just need a second sort of key forward really to come and jump out. I think Griffiths is probably the one that they'd like it to be. Vickery's probably not going to be at the club next year, but Griffiths is the one they'd like to be that second key forward. Whether he can do it on a consistent basis is going to be critical. You've always got your smalls in there with Lloyd and Rioli, so they're going to be very good. And speaking of Griffiths, here he goes kicking the goal. Next team we're going to look at is Collingwood. I think they're in a little bit of trouble. Losing Dane Swan at the end of the year, I don't think it's going to be too much. Whether or not he plays on, of course, that's up to him, but I don't think he will. Because Collingwood, I don't think they're going to be that much more improved next season. The difference between, I think, a side like Richmond and a side like Collingwood is that you can actually see some of the potential in the side. And I think with Collingwood, it's very difficult to see who the kids coming through are apart from Darcy Moore. He's one of the big critical factors to how Collingwood will go. I mean, you've got Moore and Cox in that forward line, but apart from them, Treloar's pretty much doing as much as he can at the moment. Pendlebury's still going to be playing pretty good football. Taylor Adams is a very, very good player, and he'll be the next captain at Collingwood. So it's just a number of these factors that will determine how well Collingwood go next year, and I just can't see too much improvement coming from them. I know they've always said 2017, 2018 was their year that they were going to rise, and unless they have dramatic internal improvement, which is very hard to see. I mean, Sinclair's probably the one that you'd like to see a lot of improvement from. Just the concussions, whether or not they hold him back But yeah, I think Collingwood's going to have maybe another difficult season, and that'll put probably the last nail in Buckley's coffin next year. I think he will probably get the sack next year if Collingwood don't make the finals, or at least don't get close to making the finals, because they're Collingwood. They're the biggest club in the competition. They should be playing finals, if not regularly, on a more regular basis. I know people don't like Collingwood, but that's how they should be thinking about these things. If they are, the biggest club in the comp. All right, let's keep going because we don't have much time here in the last quarter. Port Adelaide, they're going to get maybe Monfils back. We don't know whether they offer him another deal or not. They're certainly going to get back Ryder. Schultz will probably retire at the end of the year. Whether John Butcher plays a pivotal role next season, Lobie might play as well. Although you'd think Ryder would probably be the number one ruckman there. It's going to be an interesting year at Port Adelaide next year, because I don't think they're going to be happy with another sort of low-placed finish. I mean, I know they're in 11th at the moment, which is not extraordinarily low, but it's not in the finals, and they've really wanted to play in the final. They had the potential to play in a grand final. They lost to Hawthorn by 3 points in a prelim a couple of seasons ago. So whether or not their improvement comes, or whether they let go a Hartlett or someone to try and get in youth or more draft picks, I think that people forget Port Adelaide had this dramatic rise, but it was from such a low position not too long before that with a very similar list. So they had a lot of internal improvement, not much external new, players coming into the club. So whether they, do that again and their internal players get back to their best. Now what I mean by internal improvement is their current players get better, rather than, bringing in a new player that is already better than one of their current players. So unless they get a lot of internal improvement, I think it's going to be very difficult to see Port Adelaide climbing up the ladder, because their players have just had very inconsistent seasons, and I don't really know if that's going to change for next season. I think it's going to be very difficult to see that happening. And finally, St Kilda, I think they're going to rise next year, or you kind of say, there's 14 teams that can make the finals next season, which is kind of what we said this season, and then only 8 of them really did anything. So I think it's going to be a similar story next year with how many teams we think can make the finals. It'll just be how many perform on a consistent week-to-week basis, and how they go in that instance, and how they can perform consistently. And then who knows, you might see a team from 5th or 6th or 7th knock out a team in straight sets from the top 4. If it's just who's better on the day, really, that I think will be a very big scenario next season. Especially, I think you'll see a lot of top 8 sides get knocked off by sides that are 12th, 13th, 14th placed, because there is going to be such a more even competition next season. I know we thought this season would be as even as it's been for a while, but that's not the case, and we might see it next year. Hopefully we see it next year. I think we need a season that's going to live up to expectation, and this one's been boring since round 4, since we knew who was in the finals. So it's just one of those things we have to wait and see on. So we'll, have a look after the, finals, and I'll sort of do like a mini wash-up for those teams as well as we, get closer to it, closer to the end of the year, of course, because we still got 7 weeks of the season left. 7 weeks. It's a long time. You've got 2 more weeks, and then you've got, nice hanging from Kelly to end the match there. You've got 2 more weeks, and then you've got how many of finals? 5 weeks of finals. So you got the bye, week 1, week 2, week 3, and then the grand final. So very, very things to it's going to be interesting to see who does what, and what trade rumours end up where, and which top 8 sides continue to stay in the top 8, whether Hawthorn drop off next year, whether Geelong drop off, with a North drop off the face of the earth like Fremantle did, which has kind of already happened to them this season. But anyway, there's so much that could go wrong for all the teams, and we're just going to have to wait and see how that pans out. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. I don't really know how well I did it. How well I analysed stuff was probably really poorly, and you're going to criticise me heavily in the comments, which is great, so do that please. And yeah, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later.